What's Tarzan's favourite Christmas song? Jungle Bells. Right then, final part of the Year 10 Economic Development Test is the 9 marker. Remember, as I said previously, if you've got the test in front of you, that would be beneficial. So, when you first get to this 9 marker, you are hit with a plethora, which means a great range, of different information. Do not be scared by this. The exam board is helping you out. It is giving you specifics to talk about in the question should you not know about the question itself. So for you, like if you do your proper revision, the figures, obviously you're going to use them, but actually you'll have your own subject knowledge to back these points up anyway. So it starts with the graph. We've got the number of arrivals in millions and the receipts, aka how much money is spent in billions. We have a colour photograph which you can see two what appear to be chefs in the background, and a little cafe restaurant there to give you a little something to talk about perhaps. We've got all the different views about tourism in Botswana, one of them particularly very, very useful when it regards sustainability. We'll talk about that in a minute. And also a little bit of text saying large unspoilt wildernesses, safari tourism becoming important. So there's your figure if you want. Here's your information you're going to use. Now, because the exam board is giving you a figure, you are going to use it regardless of it being a 4 marker, 6 marker or 9 marker if it's asking you about the figure. It's helping you out. Always use the figure and be specific. If there's a graph, for goodness sake, use the actual figures from the graph. Right then, here's your question then. Let's see what we've got to do on this 9 marker. Evaluate, which means make a judgment how far. You have to weigh up something and judge how, in this case, effective. Does it work? How successful is it? So you're going to have to make a judgment on how successful tourism in reducing, making less the development gap. Another way of saying that is, will it help LIC/NEE countries develop? What else does the example tell us? Use the information above those are the previous figures, so you have got to use them, and your own knowledge. Your own knowledge is examiner speak for user case study. 9 marker, we've got to use our lovely structure. When you introduce, you answer the question. 2 PLEs, very important with the E there, because it's asking you to evaluate, try and give point, evidence, explain, or explanation I should say, link, and then evaluate. Repeat that trick twice, and then you conclude with an overall. As it's a 9 marker, you must be specific, use a case study, and if told to, use the figure as well. You have been told to use the figure, so you will use it. Right then, let's get into this answer. 4 possible introductions here. I normally do 3, but I've done 4 for this one. Intro 1 and 2 are essentially the opposite of each other. Is effective, is not effective. It's answering the question, is at a simple, straightforward level. That will get you a mark. However, I would really advise you to look at the red, what we call the Mabel introductions here. The fact that you don't side completely positive or completely negative, try and show that a little bit of balance, a little bit of evaluation. So what have we got here? I think tourism is partially effective in reducing development gap, however not all members of society benefit. See the balance there, see the way up. We're answering the question, but we are giving some evaluation as well. And intro 4, short term is effective, however long term is unsustainable and is therefore not effective. So you're giving the examiner something, you're giving him a little lead in here to show that you're going to do some evaluation. Why are these good introductions? Because they answer the question. They show judgment. This is what your introduction must do. So it's just absolutely crucial. If you highlight the key words of the question in your first sentence, you can always answer the question. You can say it either is effective or it's not effective. And if you're aiming for those grade 5s and higher, I want you to show some balance there. Don't come down completely on the side of it works or it does not work. Try and give the examiner something to show him that you are going to evaluate as you go. Any of those introductions will be fine, but 3 and 4 worth a little bit more. Oh, that rhymed. Right then, PLE number 1. How can tourism help a country develop? Well, it creates a range of tertiary jobs and income. It's obvious, you all know this, you live in Cornwall, you know that tourism brings money in, you know it brings jobs in. I'm sure people that you know work in the tourist industry, so it's an easy point to make. Evidence in the figure, there's your like flagpole to the examiner saying, look, I can I'm using the figure, Mr. or Mrs. Examiner. Give me marks. I can see chefs employed in a resort. There's your example jobs. And then some more evidence, because you know your facts and figures. In Kenya, 2 million visitors generate $5 billion a year for the country or for the economy. There's your evidence to back your point up. Well, explain, how on earth will this mean that the country will develop? Well, those jobs and the spending by tourists on things like souvenirs and entertainment means the amount of tax paid increases, and it's always the same from that point. If you have an increase in tax, you can say that the government is going to invest in schools, and it's the same explanation as always. Schools means that in the future people can read and write, they can do highly skilled jobs. Link back to the question, they pay more tax, positive multiplier, and economic development. You've answered the question here because you're saying that the country will develop. Okay, you're saying that it is effective. Let's evaluate though. The fact that 40% of the population of Kenya is below the poverty line means that it doesn't benefit the entire population. Top level evaluation here on the grounds that you're saying although some people benefit, it's not everybody. Money is often spent on tourist infrastructure such as airports rather than that of healthcare and education. So you're clearly answering the question here. You are saying it is effective, however you're giving the examiner something to show that you're weighing this up. Peely number 2 then, let's move on to our next point. Our point here is safari tourism can also generate jobs and economic development in more rural areas. So we're taking the figure here as well as our own understanding of Kenya. So we talk specifically about safari. It was in the figure. You could also write there in the figure, I can see that, but we'll come to that later. Evidence, local people to national parks in Kenya such as Tsavo can gain jobs using their local expertise such as tour guides, and that Maasai tribe are given the opportunity to gain money from tourists observing their day-to-day life. I assume you will have seen a video of the Maasai dancing and selling wares like necklaces to tourists. That's the idea that they will earn more money, where in the past they had no concept of money. They lived as nomadic pastoralists. So the idea is this is another group of people with more money. When we come into our explanation, we've got there additional income, groups of people with more money, spending in the local economy as seen in the figure, such as hairdressers. You had to come up with an example of where these people could spend, generates more business for these businesses. That leads to more tax being paid, and we did schools the first time. Now let's show that we're going to invest in healthcare. Because more tax is paid, rural healthcare improves, meaning a longer life expectancy and a longer amount of time paying taxes in those rural areas. Link back to the question, this shows how tourist industry can be effective in rural areas of LIC such as Kenya. The evaluation here is the big one. This is your real go-to evaluation of tourism. The problem is that tourism is argued to be unsustainable. Tourists damage safari parks, for example, there, like soil erosion by off-road vehicles. That means that your grasses die, animals migrate, and it therefore means tourists won't come and visit because the attraction won't be there in the future. That means if you're basing economic development on this and the tourists don't come, that will not lead to development. So our evaluation is so crucial to show the examiner, look, it could be effective, however, I don't think it will be. So the final thing we've got to do after our 2 Peelies is our conclusion. We've got to answer the question. We have got to make a judgment. Now, if I were writing this answer, I would write something along these lines. I think that tourism does benefit Kenya. You've backed that up in the answer that you've given, but the benefit isn't universal and it is unsustainable. It's a brilliant conclusion because you're evaluating, you're balancing, and the fact that the last sentence there is literally your answer, meaning tourism will not lead to the development gap being reduced. You are literally telling the examiner it will not be effective. Anything not sure about that 9 marker, come and see us down in HA. I will talk you through it. I can also talk you through the issue of overgrazing, which was another point we could have made in this answer.